You owe us this $4 million for the burden of raising you. My father said it without a shred of irony, staring at the bank statement my sister had just stolen from my purse. The laughter about my thrift store clothes died instantly. They didn't ask how I earned it. They just demanded I hand it over to save their house. I didn't cry. I smiled, reached into my bag for a pen, and looked my father in the eye. Okay, I said. Let's talk business. My name is Evelina, and I'm 32 years old. But in this house, I'm still the mistake that forced a shotgun wedding 3 decades ago. The air in the dining room shifted the moment I said business. It wasn't family anymore. It was a negotiation. And they smelled blood. Bella didn't even wait for me to finish the sentence. She started listing her needs like she was ordering room service. The lease on her Range Rover was 3 months behind. Her maxed-out credit cards from that disastrous influencer trip to Dubai needed to be wiped. She threw the numbers at me, 50,000 here, 20,000 there, assuming my wallet was already open. My mother, Melissa, dabbed at dry eyes and murmured about God providing a miracle. I watched them with the detached focus of a forensic auditor examining a fraudulent ledger. They thought they had me cornered. They thought guilt was a currency I still traded in. They forgot that for 10 years, my job has been catching people who think they are smarter than the numbers. I reached into my briefcase. I didn't pull out a checkbook. I pulled out a single, crisp document. The header read, Affidavit of Financial Solvency. I can help, I said, keeping my voice low and even. But my assets are tied up in trusts. To release any funds for charitable family aid, I need proof of financial hardship. It's a tax requirement. My father narrowed his eyes. Michael has the survival instincts of a street rat, even if he dresses like a country club retiree. We don't need lawyers involved, Evie. Just a transfer. It's not for lawyers. It's for the IRS. I leaned in, dropping my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. This was the bait. I knew about the cash they skimmed from their construction business. I knew about the offshore gambling account Michael thought was untraceable. Dad, if I transfer $500,000 to you, the IRS triggers an automatic audit. They will turn your finances inside out. Unless. I tapped the paper. Unless you sign this affidavit stating you are legally insolvent. If you list your liquid assets as zero, the IRS views the transfer as emergency relief. They stop looking. It protects your cash. The room went silent. I saw the gears turning in Michael's head. He looked at Melissa. They were terrified of an audit. They had secrets buried in their accounts that would send them to jail. I was offering them a shield. All they had to do was lie on a sworn federal document. Greed won. It always does. Give me the pen, Michael said. He grabbed the form. He didn't even read the perjury warning in bold print at the bottom. He checked the box for no other assets. He wrote $0 and 0 cents on the line for liquid cash. He signed his name with a flourish. Melissa signed next, her hand shaking just enough to betray her nerves, but not enough to stop her. Bella signed as the witness, bored, already back on her phone looking at vacation rentals. I took the document back. I checked the signatures. Valid. Notarized by their own greed. I slid the paper into my bag and snapped the lock shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. Great, Bella said, holding out her hand. So, transfer it now? I stood up and smoothed my skirt. I'll send this to my team for verification. If everything checks out, we'll talk. Wait, Michael said, half rising from his chair. You're leaving? Where's the money? There is no money, Dad. Not today. I walked to the door. I have to verify you aren't lying to the federal government first. You know how sticklers they are. I walked out the front door before they could process the rejection. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind me, sealing the tomb. I walked to my car, the affidavit sitting on the passenger seat. They thought they had just dodged a tax bullet. They had no idea they just signed their own confession. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, as I drove away from the suburb that had never really been my home. The adrenaline from the confrontation began to fade, replaced by the familiar, cold ache of memory. The nickname Thrift Store Girl echoed in my mind, not as the playful teasing Michael claimed it was, but as the systematic erasure of my dignity. They called it sacrifice. That was the word Melissa used whenever I asked why I had to go to boarding school while Bella stayed home with new cars and private tutors. We are starving ourselves to give you a better education, she would say, tears welling in her eyes on cue. You don't know how much we give up for you. For years, I believed her. I carried the guilt like a stone in my gut. I studied until my eyes burned, convinced I had to make their suffering worth it. I ate cheap food and wore secondhand clothes because I thought I owed them for every penny they spent on my tuition. But I wasn't a child anymore. I was an auditor. And auditors check the receipts. The truth hit me last year when I was going through my grandfather's probate records online. He hadn't just left them a stipend. He had set up a specific educational trust for me. Fully funded. Designed to cover the best schools in the country. He knew they were irresponsible. He tried to protect me from the grave. The tuition checks Melissa cried over weren't coming from their starvation. They were coming from my money. And the boarding school? It wasn't prestigious. It was the cheapest accredited institution in the state. A place where they warehouse kids whose parents don't want to deal with them. They didn't send me away to learn. They sent me away so they could turn my bedroom into a high-stakes poker den. They needed the space for their weekly games, and they needed my trust fund to cover their losses when the cards didn't go their way. Every time I came home for holidays, my room smelled faintly of cigar smoke and stale beer. But they told me I was imagining things. They told me I was ungrateful. We sacrificed everything for you. Melissa had sobbed. You didn't sacrifice for me. I whispered to the empty car. You exiled me to hide your sins. The realization didn't make me sad. It made me dangerous. They had stolen my childhood and sold it back to me as a debt. They had convinced me I was a burden when I was actually their bankroll. I wasn't destroying a family. I was auditing a crime ring that had been operating for 30 years. And the audit was just beginning. The harassment started at 7 in the morning the next day. My phone buzzed against the nightstand, vibrating with the frantic energy of a family losing its grip. It wasn't an apology. It was an invoice. Bella had sent a screenshot of her car lease agreement. Overdue notice was stamped in red across the top. Underneath, she typed, just wire it directly to the dealer. Account number is below. I don't want the cash hitting my account or the bank will take it for the overdraft fees. She didn't ask. She directed. In Bella's mind, my bank account was now community property. I scrolled up. There were more. Screenshots of credit card minimum payments. A delinquent Neiman Marcus account. Even a Venmo request for emotional damages. $5,000. I swiped the notifications away and opened social media. My mother, Melissa, was busy too. She had posted a photo of herself looking mournful in a church pew. The caption read, "Sharper than a serpent's tooth is an ungrateful child, praying for those who chose money over blood." The comments were filled with sympathy from her bridge club friends, none of whom knew she had just committed perjury on a federal affidavit. They were loud. They were messy. They were terrified. I went to my office. I had actual work to do. Audits don't run themselves, but the distraction arrived at noon. A courier knocked on the glass door of my firm. He wasn't carrying flowers or an apology letter. He was carrying a thick, legal-sized envelope marked, "Urgent Private." I signed for it. The return address was a generic legal mill in downtown Dallas. I sliced it open. Inside was a single document. Retroactive waiver of beneficiary rights. Attached was a sticky note in my father's handwriting. Evie. Accountant found a clerical error from 2010 regarding Grandpa's money. Just sign this so we don't get fined. Love. Dad. I sat down and read the fine print. It was a legal masterpiece of desperation. The document stated that I, Evelina, acknowledged receipt of my full $500,000 inheritance on my 18th birthday 14 years ago, and that I held the trustees my parents harmless for any administrative delays. They wanted me to sign a lie that said they paid me. My pulse hammered in my ears. Why now? Why send this the day after they found out I was rich? Because they knew. They knew I was an auditor. They knew I had resources now. For 14 years, they felt safe because I was poor and powerless. A broke college student can't hire a forensic accountant to investigate a missing trust fund. But a millionaire? A millionaire digs. They were trying to close the cold case before I even realized a crime had been committed. They were scared. I ran my finger over the dateline. They wanted me to backdate my signature to 2010. They thought this document would save them. Instead, it was the map to the bodies. By sending this, they confirmed two things. First, the money was definitely stolen. Not just lost. Second, they had forged paperwork back then to get the cash, and now they needed my real signature to cover the forgery in case I went looking. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Michael. I didn't call Melissa. I called Marcus, a vulture capitalist I'd worked with on a bankruptcy case last year. He specialized in buying things people didn't want to sell. "Marcus," I said when he picked up, "I need to buy a debt. It's toxic, it's messy, and I want to pay a premium to make sure nobody else gets it." "Sounds like my kind of party," he rasped. "Who's the target?" I looked at the waiver on my desk. My parents. I didn't meet Marcus at a flashy office. We met at a nondescript diner near the industrial park, the kind of place where business is done over burnt coffee and greasy eggs. Marcus was already there, nursing a black coffee, his eyes scanning a spreadsheet on his tablet. He didn't look like a shark. He looked like a tired accountant. But I knew better. "The Henderson mortgage," Marcus said without preamble. "It's a mess." Subprime lender, multiple missed payments, hidden second lien. Your parents are drowning, Evie. They just haven't stopped thrashing yet. I know, I said. That's why I want it. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You want to buy a non-performing note on a property with negative equity? That's not an investment. That's charity. It's not charity. It's leverage. I slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a certified check for the full balance of the note, plus a 20% premium. I want the paper, Marcus. I want to be the bank, and I want the transfer expedited. He looked at the check, then at me. A slow smile spread across his face. You're not flipping this house, are you? No, I said. I'm foreclosing on it. He chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. Family business is always the bloodiest. All right. The bank will take the premium. They want this off their books anyway. I can have the assignment of mortgage recorded by Friday. Perfect. I checked my phone. The calendar notification stared back at me. Tuesday, May 7th. Texas foreclosure day. One more thing, Marcus said, tapping his tablet. If you foreclose, you have to give notice. Texas requires 21 days before the sale. You serve them the notice of default and intent to accelerate. If they don't cure the default, which they can't, you serve the notice of sale. Then, on the first Tuesday of the month, the house is yours. I know the code, I said. I've already drafted the notices. You're scary when you're motivated, Marcus said, pocketing the check. I'm just efficient. I left the diner and drove back to my office. The timeline was tight but perfect. I had the mortgage note. I had the solvency affidavit where they swore under penalty of perjury that they had no money to pay their debts. Now, I just needed to close the loop. I sat at my desk and pulled up the draft of the Notice of Acceleration. It's a terrifying document if you're a homeowner. It says, you broke the contract. We don't want the missed payments anymore. We want the entire loan balance. Now, usually, banks send these notices as a last resort. For me, it was the first move. I stapled their signed solvency affidavit to the file. The same, we're insolvent, lie they'd used to bluff the IRS. Now it proved they couldn't cure an accelerated loan. They'd trapped themselves. I printed everything. The paper felt heavy in my hands. This wasn't revenge. Revenge is emotional and sloppy. This was liquidation. And I was the liquidator. With the foreclosure clock racing toward Texas Tuesday, I turned to the other document on my desk. The retroactive waiver. My parents had mailed it as a clerical fix from 14 years ago. They needed my signature to validate the claim that I'd received my grandfather's $500,000. In their panic, they'd handed me the weapon. I scanned the waiver and zoomed in on the signature line. Evelina Henderson. It looked right, same letters, same rhythm, but the slant was wrong. My handwriting leans left. This leaned right. Too practiced. Too confident. I opened a folder labeled Old Correspondence. I don't keep sentimental things. I keep records. I found a birthday card Bella sent when she was 15. A sad clown. A cruel message. Happy birthday. Thrift Store Girl. Hope you can afford cake. I scanned it, pulled both images into Photoshop, and overlaid Bella's signature onto the waiver's signature. The loops. The sharp cross on the T. Perfect alignment. The room went thin with quiet. Bella wasn't just the spoiled beneficiary, she was the architect. While I was scrubbing toilets at boarding school to pay for extra books, she was at the kitchen table practicing my name so they could raid my trust fund. She stole my future to buy her first BMW. Handwriting analysis can be argued, though. I needed something that couldn't be spun. I scrolled to the notary stamp. In Texas, a waiver like this requires a notary witness. The stamp was faded but readable. Patricia Lewis, Notary Public, State of Texas. Commission expires November 2012. The name hit like a slap. Patricia Lewis, Patty Bella's best friend in 10th grade. The girl who used to help Bella egg my car. I did the math. 14 years ago, Patricia Lewis was 15. You have to be 18 to be a notary in Texas. I laughed cold and sharp. They'd bought a fake notary stamp online, some cheap prop, and used it to steal $500,000. They were so sure I'd never check that they let a teenager notarize a felony. This wasn't a clerical error. It was conspiracy. Fraud. And because they mailed it across state lines to get my signature, it was mail fraud. I looked at Bella's Instagram printout on my desk, her posing in front of a leased Range Rover with number self-made. I used to want an apology. I used to want them to admit they loved her more. But staring at that stamp, the need for affection evaporated. You don't want love from criminals. You want justice. I filed everything under a new label. Evidence. Bella wanted to be treated like an adult? Fine. Adults face consequences. I called my assistant. Confirm the meeting with the Hendersons for tomorrow. Lawyer's office. Tell them I'm bringing the check. I wasn't bringing a check. I was bringing the end. They arrived like they were attending a coronation. Michael wore his closing deals suit, though he hadn't closed a legitimate deal in years. Melissa had polished her pearls. Bella scrolled through Expedia, debating Tulum versus Cabo like her life wasn't about to explode. They sat. Smiled. The smiles of people who think they've won without paying. Well? Michael said, rubbing his hands. Did the wire clear? I sat at the head of the table with a single thick red folder. No smile. I slid it across the mahogany until it stopped in front of Bella. Open it. She flipped it up, expecting a cashier's check. Instead, she pulled out a legal notice on heavy bond paper. Notice of acceleration and intent to foreclose. Her voice went thin. What is this? Where's the money? There is no money for you, I said. That's an eviction notice. Michael ripped the paper from her, his face draining from smug to gray in seconds. Foreclose? You can't foreclose. The bank holds the note. I am the bank, I said calmly. I bought your mortgage note on Friday. You're 6 months behind. And according to the solvency affidavit you signed yesterday, you have 0 assets to cure the default. I'm accelerating the loan. You owe the full balance immediately. Melissa lunged for oxygen and honesty at the same time. We can pay. We have money we have. Then you committed perjury. I cut in. Yesterday you swore you were insolvent. If you suddenly find cash now, I'll forward the recording of this meeting to the IRS. That's bankruptcy fraud. Michael exploded to his feet, chair snapping back. You ungrateful little witch. That house is my legacy. Your legacy is a lie, I said. Just like the waiver you mailed me. I tapped the second document. The forensic comparison signature overlays, the notary stamp, and a side-by-side link to Patricia Lewis's identity. Patricia Lewis wasn't a notary, I said, looking straight at Bella. She was 15. You forged my signature to steal my trust fund, and you used a fake stamp to cover it. Grand larceny. Forgery. Mail fraud. Bella's confidence collapsed into pure panic. I was just a kid. Dad told me. He said we needed the money. Shut up, Michael roared. She was a child. Melissa sobbed, clutching his arm. You can't send your sister to jail. She knows now, I said. And so do you. The room spiraled, Michael threatening. Melissa begging. Family values. Bella hyperventilating as her influencer life turned into a countdown to a mugshot. I stood and pointed to the small black dome in the ceiling corner. This is a law office, I said. Everything you just admitted, cash, forgery, threats, is recorded. My lawyer has a copy. The police will have a copy within the hour. I walked to the door. You have 21 days to vacate, I said, not looking back. Texas Tuesday is coming. Texas Tuesday arrived 25 days later, humid, sticky, inevitable. I didn't need to watch a gavel fall. My lawyer handled the auction. By noon, the house, my mother's pride, my father's legacy, belonged to my shell company. An hour later, the eviction notice was served. The neighbors told me the rest. Michael tried to barricade the door. Melissa screamed at the constable and called Bella a thief. Like the truth was new. Bella live-streamed the eviction for sympathy, until the comments filled with links to public filings. Forgery, the affidavit, the fraud. Sponsors dropped her before the moving truck started. They left with what they could carry. The rest, oak furniture, poker table, all the props of their superiority, hit the curb. And the eviction was only domino one. The solvency affidavit did exactly what I designed it to do. An anonymous tip landed at the IRS attached to their sworn statement claiming 0 assets. The audit opened. Then widened. Offshore gambling accounts. Skimming from the construction business. The legacy wasn't just bankrupt, it was criminal. They spent 30 years gambling with my future. I just called their bluff. I sold the house 3 months later. I didn't want it. It smelled like cigar smoke and betrayal. I added the profit to my $4 million and walked into a different kind of office, not a law firm. A foundation. I slid a check across the table for $500,000, the exact amount Bella stole. This is seed money, I said. A scholarship. The Second Chance Trust. For students financially abused by their families. Tuition. Books. Housing. The start I never got. The director stared at the check like it was sunlight. This will change lives. You're saving them. No, I said, feeling warmth for the first time in years. I'm just planting a garden. Back home, the silence felt clean. No debts, no guilt, no family noise. I opened the laptop folder labeled Family Debt, Scans, Recordings, Eviction Photos, Armor. Right-click. Delete. The screen cleared. So did my chest. People say revenge is best served cold. They're wrong. Revenge is demolition. Victory is what you build after the rubble is gone. I am Evelina. I am the Thrift Store Girl. And I am finally free. Have you ever had to buy your own freedom from the people who were supposed to protect you? Tell me your story in the comments below.